What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mullican, joined by the man behind all the controls, the man with the plan, the man with the greatest Georgia wrestling calendar of all time, Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you, my brother?
We were just talking about how crazy that calendar is going to be this weekend. It was a kind of a light one, this past weekend, quasi, I guess, but this coming up weekend, not so much. That's for sure.
Yes, it is crazy, crazy, crazy. And to help us segue, I think we should share that calendar to all of our great patrons so they can see all the great Georgia wrestling action and even some Carolinas wrestling. So patreon.com/tapped-out-pod is where you get all the podcasts on the network early. It is where you get behind the scenes stuff. You get coffees and cross faces. You get Heath's hot takes. Also, you got to go to YouTube. You got to hit that subscribe button. You got to hit the like button. You got to hit the bell. The bell is what you got to hit so you get all the notifications because you never know. You never know what kind of content is coming out. And also, hey, we know not everybody's video. Some of y'all are like me. You're an audio person. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all the places where you can find your audio podcast. We are available, and we are just so grateful for everyone's support as the podcast continues to grow. Coming off a week of pulling double duty and back to normal this week, and Myron will be back in his co-captain's chair this week for the national show.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big one too. There's a ton. I thought it was going to be a light week coming off of the double header as far as the PLE/pay-per-view and stuff. But we had a national show here locally, so we're actually going to talk a little bit about the MLW stuff, just kind of to plug this week's national show. A lot of stuff went down there that was pretty surprising, to say the least.
I
But
totally forgot about that ML. I saw somebody posted about it. I was like, oh, that was this weekend. So fans, before we get too far into the show, we want to acknowledge the passing of someone who's very involved in Southeast wrestling. Someone I'm not as familiar with as you, and that is Dennis Gale, who passed away over the weekend. Nick, what are your memories of Dennis Gale?
listen, man, Dennis Gale's been in wrestling for over 40 years. Long, long time. So very much inside, like I said, in that Gulf Coast area is kind of where he was like predominantly at. I know him more, from being a young man watching, it's funny because people go back to the territories. We've talked about this a little bit last week on the national show, but that I guess it's kind of lost on this generation of how the territories really worked, and that they were kind of their own entity. They weren't really over. But anyway, I don't want to sidebar back on that. But so Mr. Gale was kind of a real big, influence there in the Southeast, and but I knew him more from his days because obviously I'm friends with Terry Lawler, who we'll discuss here in a minute. But his brother Steve, the Brawler Lawler, was in a tag team with Mr. Gale. So that's kind of how I knew, like, my primary connection to him was that. But I always tell people, I always say, if you want to know what kind of impact, influence, legacy you leave in wrestling, if, Mr. Ron Fuller's putting out a video paying tribute to you, you've done something and you've left a legacy in wrestling. And I saw that yesterday. And it's, it was kind of like, man, it's cool that, we see these guys pay the respects, to each other. Right. And somebody like Ron Fuller, who I have the utmost respect for, if
Right.
if he's paying it, I tell people, like, dude's earned it. So for sure.
Yeah. So thoughts and prayers and well wishes out to his family. As we said, it was a crazy weekend leading into another crazy weekend. So let's jump right into this week's Indy Rewind. You and I and some Myron and a special guest went down to Jefferson, Georgia, to the Jackson County Agricultural Center for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. Let me tell you, what an amazing venue. Holy cow.
I saw that when we put. They posted a picture just of the setup the day before, the night before.
Yeah.
That I was blown away by, like, man, what a venue. Then we show up and listen. I'm going to throw it out there, dude, and be fully. When we heard, agriculture center, like I was really hesitant, really nervous.
Right.
But guys, when they run this building again, because Jackson County, when they run this building again, please. Super close to my house, less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's funny. You came down to the show. I went up to the show because it's got in between. And it's an amazing venue. I think they did a great job with, as crazy as it sounds, like the turf-like carpet.
Yeah.
Was really cool. The lighting. Anyway, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it was an amazing venue. I really, really hope and it's right. Look, friend of the show, Justin saying, Jason, he was like, dude, he'd been telling me that he thought that somebody could run this venue. He'd been saying this for a while now.
Wow.
And so to see it done, and I'm like, he even came up after the show. Was like, I told everybody there's a market here. I was like, yes, you did. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Announced crowd of over 350. That was when they announced that number. I was like, I don't even need to. I totally believe that number. What were some things that stood out to you? I mean, this was it was very much a house show feel. But what were some things that stood out to you?
It's it's very much a Myron cliche at this point. And I know you kind of beat the same drum. Wrestlers look like wrestlers, and what we mean by that, folks, is. It doesn't mean that everybody's got to be, 6'3", 6'4", jacked bodybuilder. There's on there, and I'm coming to that guy. But, but there are, because you could even be, and I tell people all the time, Dusty still looked like a wrestler because of the charisma and the package, right? It is hard. It is hard. I will be, I'm going to let you take away from what I'm about to say and just run with it. You can go to a lot of indie shows where at the end of the night, there's a couple guys typically on the card that you're kind of like, I just didn't buy him as a wrestler.
Right.
There wasn't a guy on this card that fit that bill. Like, they were all like, oh, nope, yep, nodding our heads.
Yeah. From the look, the gear, everyone on that show had professional looking gear. They either had wrestling boots or they had non-flea market kick pads. They had wrestling shoes that did not look like they were 37 years old. They had something we've never seen at a wrestling show before. They had one of those LED screens put up, and it wasn't showing different things. Well, we've seen it at Disruptor, but that's part of the bar. Mm-hmm. And they just used the LED screen to put up the Turnbuckle logo, and they used it for a picture backdrop.
Yeah.
So the production was really good. One thing I especially loved about this show, because it had like a WWE house show feel, the interaction with the crowd, there seemed to be a little more showmanship, if you know what I mean. There was that great blend of, yes, the ring work was tight, but it was like, hey, we're putting on a show. Mm-hmm. And the biggest, if anyone from Turnbuckle's listening to this, the absolute biggest compliment I can pay you is I brought someone with me who had never been to a live wrestling show before. And when I saw her yesterday, she said, I can't wait to go to another wrestling show with you. So she went in completely open-minded and said, yep, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Let's go do that again. So thank you on behalf of myself. I thank you, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, and it was great. It was a fun night, and I love the way they had they were going to have a 6-man main event. QT comes out, does a promo, announces I'm going to be in the 6-man. He's interrupted, and then that's interrupted by Billy Gunn, who says, we're going to have an 8-man match. I'm in.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's, it ended up being QT, Billy Gunn, Brady Booker and Parker Lee. So where the assumption is it was, the 3 of the 4 that not
Right.
Billy Gunn were going to be in the 6-man. And so BGU, I don't know, because you were not as familiar with those guys as I am. I've seen them at multiple promotions around. It's their financial backer that I'm in Chic, but their true leader is Jack Jameson.
Yes.
And you find I had mentioned this guy to you before,
yes,
and we had talked a little bit about his attitude and those type of things. And you finally got to see it in person, right? You're like, who is this guy?
Right.
By the way,
he knew who we were.
Yes. The funny thing about Jack Jameson is you can, by the way, see him. You can catch him on TV from time to time, AEW Ring of Honor stuff. You've heard me say this about some guys where we're like, look, I cannot, nor will I. We always say we're critical but fair, right? That's our thing. So you got to give credit where credit is due. Right. The guy's got an amazing look. Clearly has, some might call it attitude, some might call it personality. Call it whichever one you want. The charisma, whether whether he's an ass or not, it's not the point. It's
right.
But so he does have he's got something. And the team he's built around him, by the way, is spectacular. And that's when you can't. So as a leader of that group, I always say he's the leader of that group. I get he's got a financial backer, but the talent he surrounds him with is pretty impressive as well. The BGU's not just a gimmick. I mean, you can look at all those guys and go, that's a lifestyle for those dudes. So they are literally jacked, no pun intended.
Right. Again, a great compliment I could pay Jack Jameson is I may just be handing out compliments this whole show. Who knows? But that's the good feeling I got is in an 8-man match where so many people had the it factor. He was right there with them, and I was super impressed. Another team.
Hold on. Sorry. I want to come back because this is what could get lost on this. And I tell people this. I was trying to explain this to my wife, and I said the sheer star power in that ring. You've got QT Marshall, you've got Billy Gunn in the ring. It could be very quickly on a lot of shows that you go to that the other talents in that ring just get completely outshone. And they look less than. They do a spectacular job with a guy like Brady Booker, who's like, nope, he belongs there. And then you get those talents, with the BGU on the other side, and you're kind of like, no, I buy it. Hey, they belong in there with these guys too. And that's the compliment. That's what I always tell people. When you go to an indie show, sometimes when you have somebody on the show, it can get lost. And it absolutely did not. They actually pulled it off, and we're like, no, they absolutely belonged in the ring with those guys. And by the way, folks, now I'm going to save this to the end. Go ahead. I'm going to say it.
One of the things I really loved and appreciate about this show is the talents. The risk that they took were character risk. As far as the physicality of the matches, they stayed in their lane. And it made every match, except for one, and I think that was a chemistry thing between the wrestlers. I don't think that was a skill thing. I think that was a chemistry thing. But every match was solid, crisp. Listen, I thought it was really great. One of the things I really loved too, the infantry was there. They wrestled the superstars. I love the matching gear. Again, I talked about gear earlier. They got over with me. Their gimmick, the interaction with the crowd. There was a young girl sitting behind us that from the first opening bell, she was yelling, and they were yelling back at her.
Did you know that was her first wrestling show?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I heard her dad say that was her first wrestling show.
Well, it won't be her last. Holy cow.
Nope.
Jefferson County or Jefferson, Georgia's. Get this back down here. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Also, good friend of the show, your good friend Terry Lawler on the show. Always great to see him.
Yeah, I was stunned when I walked in. I didn't realize he was going to be there. Like we ran into him outside. We were actually about to go in, and he was outside, and it was kind of like I literally joked with him and said like, "What are you doing here?" You know, like he was just like, "Oh, I'm working tonight." I was like, "I didn't know that," and I think that's what you're going to see a lot. And here's, by the way, why is that important to me?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes into the same vein of you brought up the infantry versus the superstars match.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about these cards and the other promotion they kind of collaborate with, you're going to see young kids get to work guys that are way more experienced than them.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's be blunt, that's better. It's a more polite way of saying you're working guys better than you.
Yes.
You get better by working guys better than you, not
That's
like,
right.
hey, this, and this. So you're going to get younger talents, get it like the superstar. Hey, look, they got to look, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not the infantry. They're not on the infantry's level. No disrespect to those kids. They're just not. But guess what? Work them show after show after show. Guess who's going to get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same thing. So, and I think having somebody like Terry on that show who's working with, Michael Solar and somebody, you know what I mean? Like some of these younger talents, they do get better. And that's why I like these shows so much, because it looks like you're going to get some experience versus some younger talents, and they're going to get better and as a whole.
You just mentioned a name, just real quick, Michael Solar. I see this guy everywhere, setting up a ring, helping. He gets in on some matches. That's a guy. That's a guy. He's making connections. He's wrestling people better than him. That's a guy I have penciled in to keep an eye on. And here, and maybe we should talk about this later in another segment. If you are a wrestler, I other than people like Terry Lawler and a few, I get what I'm trying to say is there's not a lot of open spots on these turnbuckle shows.
No.
There ain't a lot of spots. We talked about that a little bit last week. Turnbuckle was the show we went to this weekend, but it wasn't the only show this weekend. Classic City was down in Macon, Georgia. They had around 200. They were there at the Capitol Theater, which sounds like a great place to watch a wrestling show. But Macon is a hall.
Yeah.
So, we'll look at the wrestling calendar and see if that's one we can make. Premier All-Star Wrestling was back in Buchanan, Georgia. Around 215 paid in the building. One of the big matches there, Frankie Valentine, Adrian Hawkins, which is a rivalry in Georgia that goes back more than 15 years.
Yeah, those guys are like old Rampage feuds. Like that was a callback. I won't lie to you. When I saw that was like really like wild to see something that's a callback from that. And that's, that area, it's kind of in the area. So it worked.
They also had a blend. So you had guys who are, mainstays in Georgia. They had a lot of young talent. You had the hierarchy, Murder One, Joe Black retaining those tag team titles. One of the cool things, so their next show, June 15th in Carrollton, so just in a couple weeks. And we appreciate them sending us some great information about their show. You can get a family 4-pack of tickets for $30. That's not too bad for a great night of entertainment.
Well, and to top it all off, if they're 10 and under, it's free. So it's like, you know what I mean? So like you could literally bring it, depending on the age of your kids, you could actually end up taking 5 or 6 people for that price, because you could buy the family 4-pack and then take your kids that are under 10, or bring their friends, and look, pack the house. Like the 215 was the paid, but I think they got like 260 with the comps and stuff,
right.
Jammed in there. So kudos to those guys, and really making an effort to bring back wrestling, in that area. And so you just want to tip your cap to those guys for making it family friendly. The pricing, like you talked about, I think those things really matter when you're trying to establish and grow your market, for sure.
That's right. Georgia Championship Wrestling was in Eatonton, Georgia, and also waiting to get a report from IWE. They had their first show there in Lexington, North Carolina, just last night, and waiting to hear back from that. But kudos to all those promotions. It was a full weekend. And coming up, holy cow, another full weekend. Let's get into making the drives of where we're going to be. First stop Friday night, going to be Canton, Georgia, and here's where we're going to be.
Attention wrestling fans! Join us Friday, June 7th for another unforgettable night as Southern Honor Wrestling presents SHW 63. Live from the Action Building in Canton, Georgia. We have another stacked card in store, including a fatal four-way match for the Jake the Snake Legacy title. Plus, it's been over a year since the People's Captain, Gunnar Miller, lost the Southern Honor Championship in highly controversial fashion. Now, he finally gets his rematch when he takes on the Priest of Punishment, Judas. Don't miss these matches and so much more on our final stop before the 6th Annual Rumble Jack. Tickets start at just $15 and go on sale at the door the night of the show beginning at 5 p.m. Doors open at 7, bell time at 8. As always, kids 10 and under are free. Spread the word, invite all your friends, and come see firsthand why we are SHW and this is our wrestling.
That's right, fans. This Friday night in Canton, Georgia, Southern Honor 63 there at the Action Building. Southern Honor 62, they did a tremendous job setting up this show, setting up some matches, kind of like finishing a chapter. And now we start the road to Rumble Jack, and which is always one of the biggest shows of the year for Southern Honor. The big match I'm looking forward to Friday night, Southern Honor Championship, Judas versus Gunnar Miller.
Yeah, it's like I said, man, the commercial says it all. It's been a year since, Gunnar lost that title. Is this his opportunity? Here's the crazy thing is, we talked about a little bit, they got at Shindig, they've got a big show coming up, in Southern Fried. And I was talking about how difficult that match was to call. This is right there with it. Judas and Gunnar. I mean, if you're a betting guy, like which one are you putting your money on? I mean, because the other guy's like, oh, so you're putting your money against that guy? It's a tough call. It's a tough call. It's a really tough call.
Right. And here's the thing. The last two shows we've seen Gunnar Miller make very quick work. Matches under 2 minutes. And so he is on, if we were doing a hot hand today, he would be definitely a hot hand. A couple of other matches I'm looking forward to there. And I'd be curious if these guys have ever faced off one-on-one. Nick Halen and Kevin Ryan, kind of like someone who's been around, and Nick Halen, someone who, he's kind of done it all in Georgia wrestling, versus Kevin Ryan, who hasn't been in the game nearly as long, but this could be a big statement match for him.
Listen, Nick's hot take of the show. Could this be the match that steals the show on this card? I know that sounds, kind of off the wall, that it's not for a title or anything like that, but I'm like, this could be it. This could be the one.
When you look at the card, which tremendous card will be there Friday night, Gunnar Judas is a certain type of match.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the other single matches, that Halen Ryan match, like you said, 100% agree with you. We won't go down the whole card, but a couple of other matches that are catch my eye. The Grapplers defending the tag team titles against Dave Stage and Cody Fluffman. Could this be Buff and Fluff 2.0 with these guys?
I saw somebody called it the Fluff Stash or something like that, and I'm like, I was kind of like, all right, I'm in on that.
I like that.
It's funny. I want to, maybe this is where I slide this comment in I've been wanting to say about this poster. It's a lot of, hey, they've got the stories, but I'm kind of intrigued that we have a couple new faces on the card.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, we've talked about, like, hey, the posters look the same and da-da-da. I'm like, well, this poster doesn't look the same, folks. There's some new names and new faces on this card. That's a plus, folks. That's a plus.
Yes. Another match they set up, the Jake the Snake Legacy title, or Heritage title, which Hunter James is trying to rename. Hunter James is defending in a four-way match. Rob Killjoy, Kyle Matthews and Tyler Stevens. That's going to be a really good match. Again, it's a stacked card, and we'll get into Southern Honor a little bit later on in the show, but I'm looking forward to that one. It's always a good time in Canton, Georgia.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, Hunter James has got the deck stacked against him for sure. And I don't know who I want to walk out with, but maybe it's not him.
I'm sure he's not surprised to hear you say that.
Probably
not. Kingdom Pro is going to be in Savannah, Georgia. We mentioned this when we were just talking in the pre-show. We have gone from Augusta's heated up. Now Savannah is heating up. Zicky Dice is going to be there. Dax Anthony, Jim and Jules. That's also there, like I said, Friday night there in Savannah. Then Saturday, holy cow. Saturday in Georgia is going to be a huge night, but none huger than what's happening in Augusta, Georgia at the Warren Road Community Center with Viral Pro Wrestling. Here's some more about that great show that's coming.
Viral Pro Wrestling presents the Garden City Classic at the Warren Road Community Center in Augusta, Georgia. The event will feature a 6-man tournament with TNA star John Schuyler, Fluffman Drew Hood, and AEW star Brock Anderson competing for the Garden City Classic Championship Trophy. In addition, BPW Women's Champion, the Polynesian Savage, Reka Tihaka takes on Cassandra Golden, while WCW Superstar Lodi faces Wade Adams.
Canada!
BPW Heavyweight Champion That Dude John Davis will also be in action. A special meet and greet with WWE Hall of Famer and legendary Four Horsemen member, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, takes place at 5 p.m. with bell time at 7 p.m. Tickets are available at bpw.ticketbud.com or at the door on the night of the event. Viral Pro Wrestling. Get infected.
Well, fans, there you saw it. It is this year's Garden City Classic from Viral Pro Wrestling. It's been several years since they've had a Garden City Classic. So if you don't know what's going on, Josh Hancock, he formed the front office. They had total control. They had all the titles. The last show, John Davis wins the heavyweight title. Front office loses the tag team titles. And so things are in disarray. Then you have Lodi coming in, a potential buyer or investor or taking control of Viral. So look, I mean, you got Arn Anderson doing a meet and greet. You've got, look at some of these matches. Drew Hood and Dave Stage. That's first time matchup. Fluffman and John Schuyler. John Schuyler making his return to Georgia. TNA star. Nick Halen's going to be there. I think this is Nick Halen's first Viral show.
I think so.
So again, we just said about Southern Honor. New people getting on posters. So that is definitely happened with Viral. John Davis is going to be defending the heavyweight title, and then we're going to get a Garden City Classic winner. If you go back, the very first one, Shawn Legacy won that and earned a title shot at the Viral Pro heavyweight title. So again, if you're in the Augusta area, you can go check that out. Georgia Premier Wrestling going to be in Jasper, Georgia, Saturday night. That's going to be a good show. You went to their, was it them? You went to their last show and had the table. Was that Georgia Premier?
Yeah. Georgia Premier. I went to their last show. I'm hoping to make it up there this one as well. I know I spoke to some of the talents this past weekend that are there. I know like Josh Cantrell, Brady Booker, Luke Sampson, the Warden, like that's kind of their mainstays. Look, if you're up in this ballpark area, kind of make a way up there, because that's the cool thing about this weekend. I will say this. Saturday, there are a lot of shows, but they're pretty spread out. They're not piled on top of each other necessarily.
Right.
So I think you can kind of, it makes it easier not having to pick and choose, just kind of go like geographically where you're close to. Right. But if you are up in this area, there's a young man there I think's got a lot of potential, and I'm curious to see. His name is Sid. Go check him out. We saw him. I've seen him now a couple times. I saw him at their show. I saw him at a Wrestling at Southern show. Super green, super young, not say, but like very much, I think there's a lot of potential there. Because here's the thing, kid's over everywhere he's at, and so that's the hard part, right? You can get better at the wrestling part. That's easier. It's like, hey, you can get better at that. But the connecting with the fan base, that's the hard part. And the kid's done it at a very early stage for him. So, but so I'm hoping that's where I end up. But I haven't like geographically mapped it out yet because I don't know because the wife might actually go with me. So if that's the case, sometimes that redirects where we go because she might want to go down to Augusta. She might want to go see Byron, so we'll see.
Yeah, you got, it's not a bad thing when your wife's trying to help you decide which wrestling show to go to. That's always a good thing. We just mentioned Savannah. Savannah's got back-to-back nights of wrestling. Coastal Empire is going to be there Saturday night. Randy Reno defending the Coastal Empire Championship. Somebody we're hearing more and more about is the Flying Fro Michael Walker defending that Chaos Championship. Tag team matches. Fluffman on the card, Hierarchy on the card, Coastal Empire. Again, we'll have more on them in a little bit. I saw this.
Hold on. I want to actually ask you. So don't go. I don't want to glance over this real quick because they got Murder Joe, Hunter James, all that stuff. But the card, like, championships matter. We're not saying championships don't matter, but the deep rooted issues here at Coastal go back to Zach Mosley, Exotic Youth, and Chip Schuyler and Simon Sermon. And that we're going to finally see. Simon Sermon and Chip Schuyler versus Exotic Youth, Mosley and Pepper Bottom. That's, I think, one of those, championships matter. I said that. I said it again. But some deep-rooted, long-term issues kind of stem out of this match. So that's kind of what you want to – and look, Zach's done it. Look, we're pulling a curtain maybe. So be it. They're doing a really good job down there. And, so if you're in this, I'm not ruling this one out. The wife might want to go to Savannah instead. So that's kind of where I'm saying, that's where we're pulled because there's a lot of really good wrestling and we're still not done.
And maybe you're listening to this, and I know we have listeners all over the country, and you're like, well, I don't. Coastal Empire started posting all their shows. So you can go back and you can follow. You can see some of the death matches they've had. And like Nick just said, you can see this feud with Sermon, Chip Schuyler, Exotic Youth, Zach Mosley. You can see that feud play out, and that is a beautiful thing to see in wrestling.
Because we understand that, there's a lot of listeners, there's a lot of, YouTube subscribers. Because here's the thing. Look into the screen. If I'm talking to you and you're watching on YouTube, most, if not all, most of these shows have YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. Some are on IWTV. So if you subscribe to there, go find them. If you hear us talking about their name, like Coastal Empire, go into your YouTube machine and type in Coastal Empire Wrestling, Savannah, Georgia, whatever, and find them and give their stuff, watch their content and support them that way. Because I get it. You may live in Texas or you may live in, Maryland or Connecticut or whatever. Give them a watch. I mean, it's another great way to just support indie wrestling is if their channel's monetized, you can help make them some money just by watching their stuff. So anyway.
That's right. So there's a match Saturday night. I have never heard of this before. Wrestlemerica, Forsyth, Georgia. The Wrestlemerica Championship on the line in what is being called an Unchained match. So you got the champion Dominic Stuckey, Jacob Johnson, CT Keys, Austin Towers, Drew Adler, and Fry Daddy. Let me just here's how this match works because I'm working out in my head. So you start the match, two guys start the match. You got four guys chained to a ring post, and after every 5 minutes, a guy's unchanged. After 5 minutes, first guy gets unchained. He's in the match. Then every 3 minutes after that until everybody's in the match and there's eliminations. You can get eliminated at any point. Never heard. I mean, we've heard of elimination matches, but never where guys are chained where they physically can't get involved in the match until it's their turn. It's almost like an elimination chamber, but I love this concept. Kudos to Wrestlemerica for doing something unique, doing something I've never heard of before, and doing something that for a moment made me think, how do I get to this show? And also Wrestlemerica. I can't wait to see this video. Hopefully there's video of this.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out, this is kind of crazy, right, that I'm going to talk about, because we discussed last week referees, pick any commentators and ring announcers. If you're looking for a ring announcer, Cheyenne Michaels, she's on, young lady who's getting her legs under, she's doing more and more shows. I'm starting to see her at more and more shows. Look, we joked about it last week. Diana Michelle can't be everywhere.
Right.
Carmen Childress can't be everywhere. Here's one to give a look to. Here's another one. Start booking Cheyenne Michaels. Bring it. So that's, it's cool to see opportunities opening it up for other people and not just wrestlers, because we talked about it last week of the shortage of those positions. We're just trying to push you in a direction to go, hey, look over here. There might be something else that that can help you down the road as well.
Yeah, if you want to be involved in wrestling, there's a phrase everybody says, wrestling is for everybody. And I think, yes, wrestling is for everybody to watch. Wrestling, I don't think is for everybody to actually be a wrestler. Correct. But ring announcer, commentary, referee, backstage interviewer, those are things that anyone who has the passion and the talent and the drive can definitely podcasting. That's right. That's right. One last show we want to let you know about, with a literally and figuratively huge main event, Bullpen Pro Wrestling, their inaugural show. This main event, Judas versus Elijah Drago, who we just saw at Turnbuckle Saturday night. Holy cow. That's one of those big boy matches, right? That's what we always, I know how the wrestling community likes to call them something else, and I'm kind of like, I disagree. I always think of like big dudes, not like big jack dudes. I always think that's a difference. Yeah. But another scenario where you're headlining a show with two guys who look like wrestlers, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. These guys are professionals. That's 100% what they are. They are new. Go give them a follow on social media so you can keep up with the announcements as they make them, where they're going to be. It's got some people behind. Bull Buchanan's behind it, obviously. Mm-hmm. So he knows wrestling. He's been involved for a long time. So I think look, give them. It's their debut show, man. Go out and check them out. Yeah, and they're doing TV title tournament, I think, is part of this show. Mm-hmm. So that's going to, what's their TV deal? Where are they going to be broadcast? So I'm interested to see that. And then Sunday, Georgia Outlaw Wrestling returns to the Royston Dome in Royston, Georgia, for a big show. And the Royston Dome heating up. June is when everybody will be hitting. Anarchy finally gets to the Royston Dome, and now they're going to have four promotions running consistently in there. So we will definitely see how that goes.
And listen, we always are telling, people they want loaded weekends for wrestling. It's a Sunday show. You can get out, check it out, right? I mean, I 100%, I'm like, go check them out. And I think and I know this one is, so that's why I'm bringing it up. What's the word I'm looking for? They, if you want to load your weekend, I love the fact that the Sunday, by the way, are you agree that I love that the Sunday shows typically start earlier?
Yes.
So it's not like, it's not like you're going to be out late Sunday night. So go check them out up there in Royston. Yeah. Give them a shot. And, Georgia Outlaw.
So in the Royston Dome, you have 4 promotions sharing a venue. There's a lot of times promotions don't share a venue. And that leads us to this next announcement or whatever. It was just announced over the weekend. Southern Violence and Wrestling is coming to Monkey Wrench Brewing there in Sewanee, Georgia, starting in August. And the reason we say that, and I don't know how deep we want to go. This is where Southern States had been running several shows. Southern States had announced they're moving somewhere else. We don't know all the behind the scenes dealings. We just know Southern States is out of Monkey Wrench. Southern Violence and Wrestling is in Monkey Wrench.
Well, we were really disappointed when Southern States left because it's very, very close to our house.
Yes.
By the way, it killed, them coming in does one thing. It does two things for me. One, it puts a promotion back really close. Look, Disruptor's the closest. I wish they were a year round. Like, I know they're doing their season format. I love that show. It's a spectacular show. There's so many things I love about Disruptor, but Monkey Wrench being close by made it really easy to see it. And by the way, typically they ran on Sunday. Based on this date, however, it looks like Southern Violence is going to run Saturdays instead of Sundays. But it also puts Southern Violence closer to me to make it be, because it's been on our list of like, hey, we got to get out to a Southern Violence show. Makes it a whole lot easier now that it's it's going to be on a Saturday, but it's going to be close to home. So that part I'm happy with.
It made us ask the question, and we may ask it as a rhetorical on this one, but we're starting to see some things in Georgia. And at some point, it seemed that there was a truce in Georgia, that everybody was getting along. Everybody was playing nice. Oh, that's your date. Okay. That just appears to be absolutely over.
So hold on. I want to ask you, because this is the humorous part that we when we asked that question, it was, I jokingly, because I don't know the year, I was making up a year, blah, blah, blah. We called it like the great North Georgia wrestling truce of 2020 or 2021, wherever it began. It honestly was probably closer to 22. Yeah. And I say that because it was when everybody kind of came back post-pandemic. It seemed to be the case. Like, hey, everybody, but look, and we're not trying, like, I'm not, as, a friend of the show, Gary Lamb, does really, really well stirring the pot. We're not. The question was, it was just more from an aspect of, there were a lot of promotions, and no fault to their own or whatever. They kind of had all, like you said, that's your area, that's my area, this is the area, hey, this is your dates, I run this day. And they kind of we had noticed a shift a little bit of, we're like, hey, well, they don't run against each other as much anymore, and this, that. And so a lot of little things. Right. So we jokingly called it the great truce of, North Georgia wrestling, because, look, South Georgia wrestling was in a struggle. So it just was what it was. Augusta was far enough out, of an outlier that it didn't kind of really, affect a ton as far as when they were running and all the above. By the way, none of them were playing nice with any of them anyway, so that doesn't matter.
Right.
But what we kind of asked ourselves, and again, this is tappedoutpod@gmail.com. If you're a Georgia indie fan, you've probably noticed, by the way, I'm gonna hit the pause button. Kudos to the young man coming up at the Turnbuckle show. We always appreciate that. Anybody that's listening, if you see us, we tell you at a show, if you see us, walk up and say, hey, hey, it makes our day to, shake somebody's hand and say, like, hey, I appreciate you listening, all that kind of stuff. So, and good luck to that young man as he's pursuing, what he wants to do as well, looking to, make his journey down in wrestling. Unpause. Yeah. What we wanted to point out was, there's so many new players in the game that weren't there when, I guess, the Great Treaty was signed.
Right.
That now what we're starting to notice is, and look, some of this is behind the scenes, some of this isn't a public thing, but it's conversations with this person and that person, and we're not throwing anybody under the bus or anything like that. But it's like, I don't think this guy signed that treaty. Like, he wasn't a part of that truce.
Right.
I don't think this guy was either. And I don't think this guy was. And it's almost kind of like we're seeing the things of, we joked about like a couple weeks ago, dude, I wish they could get together and not all run the same weekends, because it's not just, where are we going to go? But it seems to be less and less there are people that care. They're like, we're paying attention to our business. We don't really care about anything outside of our business.
Right.
that's on you to figure out. And they just, they're full steam ahead.
So it's not like it's war. It's not like there's heat. It's not like they're intentionally going after people. It's just they don't care. Hey, we're doing our thing. You do your thing. If our thing and your thing interferes, may the best person win. You know, if we're booking the same talent and they come to us and they don't go to you, you got the decision you got to make.
Yeah.
And to me, this is I don't know what the dictionary calls business, you know, and some things are just business decisions. It's not personal.
Yeah.
People are just trying to run their business. They're trying to run their venues. They're trying to book their talent. But I really think this is, I got to figure out how I want to say this. I've said this behind the scenes. I guess I'm going to say it publicly now. You would think in the rough and tumble business of professional wrestling that there would be a certain level of toughness, not physical toughness, mental toughness. What I find is that wrestling is filled with some of the most mentally weak people. People who just like, they booked the same date as us. Oh, what are we, you know? And I'm like, just deal with it. What are you going to do? You know what I mean?
I would love to know from promoters, owners, wrestlers, blah, blah, blah. Because look, we openly, this is the funny part. Everybody thinks like, oh, well, you think I don't. No. Like, I don't think that way. That's why we often, I will walk up to talents, promoters, owners all the time and say, well, what does that, I mean, how does that make you feel? What does that make you think? I'm just curious because I'm not coming from that perspective. Right. Typically I can understand their answer, but I don't know exactly necessarily like, hey, by the way, they don't all think the same way.
They don't.
Some of them like, I just don't care. And others are like, I can't believe. So I'm always curious of like, what is the etiquette? Like, what is this is the tapped out part of Gmail answer here, by the way. Right. What is that answer? Like, if somebody decides to run on your date, is there like, hey, I don't care if they run 30 plus minutes away.
Right.
But if they're inside 30 minutes, I have a problem with it. Look, I get now the taking the talent part. I kind of get. I understand. There's an old movie. It's an old movie now. I cannot believe I'm about to say this is an old movie where the old knight looks up and was like, choose wisely.
Right.
I say this to talents a lot. Choose wisely. Because if you choose the wrong promotion and they don't make it, the other guys don't forget. Just don't forget that. Now, a lot of times if there's money to be made, as you know, we've learned in the past, people forget. They forgive and forget. Or let me back up. Right. People forgive. I don't think they forget. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
I would say, to me, if I'm a promoter, booker, and I booked a talent, and they cancel my booking to take another booking with another promotion, my heat's not with that other promoter. My heat's with that talent.
Correct.
And I just say, well, I'm not going to book this talent anymore. So that, again, that's the business decision.
Tappedoutpod@gmail.com, wrestlers specifically, because you just narrowed it down to a specific topic that I would say that I would love to hear from some talents, because maybe managers and they fall in the same boat. Because there's exceptions. So we booked one show. I mean, I'm speaking from my limited experience. There were talents on that card that we booked, and they came back and said, "Hey, I'm getting offered another show. This is a scenario, and whether it's whatever, there's a million reasons." I'm always like, I'm not offended if they're offering you 4 times the rate I'm offering you. I would say you got to go do that. I get that. If they're offering you the same, then I'm like, so what's your gain in taking? They're letting me wrestle a guy that I've always wanted to wrestle, and I've never got to wrestle him before. Oh, okay, right. Cool. I got you. I can understand that perspective. But there's got to be a why, right? They can't just be. There's no heat. There's no. I don't have an issue with the talent if there's a legit, like a logical reason why he's taking the other booking. but you get one. But if it becomes two, the third one's kind of on me at that point, I think, if you give me a third. Right. But after two, you're kind of like, all right. And it's, again, not necessarily hard feelings. It's just, all right, I just can't use the guy because he's literally going to take anything else. It seems like, for whatever reason.
Some of this, for the new promotions, some of this is easily avoidable if you do your research. If you know your dates and you know the dates of other promotions, what if someone provided you a calendar with all those dates? Bada boom, bada bing. We've got that. And if you know this guy is a main event guy in promotion A and their dates are conflicting, you don't book that guy. It's pretty easy.
Okay.
Not hard.
Here's the funny thing. I'm not critiquing the promotion I'm about to discuss.
Right.
Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling is a growing company, and I mean this in a positive way. Right? They just literally announced a show for a couple weeks from now. So their dates aren't necessarily always going to be out there. It's a real thing to when I say this, younger talents that are associated because they're not. Because here's the thing, a lot of people here. I wanted to get rid of one disclaimer. There's a term that's become a thing in Georgia: nightmare factory kids or nightmare trainees or whatever. Like, no, dude, they're wrestlers at this point. Like, there's a lot of these kids. They're wrestlers. They just happen to continue. Oh, wait, you want me to say the negative word? They continue to train at the Nightmare Factory. Like, so does that make them a nightmare trainee? If they've been there for years, they just continue to go because they're trying to get better when they're not working in the ring. Folks, that ain't a bad thing. That's a really good thing for them. So if you're using talents that are heavily associated, that they continue to pursue their craft at the Nightmare Factory, they're going to have pull working for a company like Turnbuckle. So I'm saying, like, book them, but be aware of the dates of Turnbuckle. Right. Like, it's what you talked about. Do a little bit of a research. Know what you're doing. Don't blindly go into it now, because I have a gut feeling the June 22nd second show is not the last show that Turnbuckle pops up, like, with, on the fly. It's not going to be like, hey, because we have a calendar through like October. That show wasn't on it. It's not going to be the last, folks. So just kind of keep that. And anyway, so I'll get off of that soapbox.
No, you're good. Well, that's a good segue into this week's Power 5. And I'll just say these are in no particular order, but let's start off with the promotion you were just talking about. And that's Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. They put on a great show Saturday night. They have announced even more shows. They have the partnership with Wrestling at Southern. They are just going to continue to grow, do their thing. They've got 3 shows in the month of June. 3 shows. No one else in Georgia has 3 shows in the month of June.
So pause. SCA does. They run weekly. I think where the tail, the biggest difference of that's going to be, Turnbuckle's not running all in one in one building. So they don't have a residence, as we like to call them. They're going to hit here, and here. Right. By the way, that traveling format this is why they're on this list, in my opinion. One of the biggest advantages they have is they are going to work Athens, Jefferson, Stone Mountain, and other places. I know there's other places they're going to be, and that in itself creates an opportunity. I wouldn't be stunned if we got to a point where there were 4 shows in a month in 4 different 4 different buildings. And again, being partnered, collaborating with, pooling the resources, pick whatever the term might be, with Wrestling at Southern, since they're all kind of, when you add the Monday shows at Wrestling at Southern, which you should go out and check out and see, by the way. I'm a big fan of this. Look, I love a good Monday, Thursday show, something that's like not making me choose what I'm going to do on the weekend. So I love those shows. And then it kind of what we were talking about just then. The reason they're in the Power Five is the resources at their availability that they have. That sets them up, just makes them different than everybody else. I think that's the huge. How many shows can Billy Gunn show up at and just decide he wants to work?
Yes.
So,
and we've got better than, less than, different than. I think Turnbuckle hits 2 of those. 2 out of 3.
Correct.
Next, we got Gary Lamb and Southern Honor. In my notes, I put an asterisk here. They've, like I said, they've kind of finished the hierarchy in-game angle. They've got to pull off a show Friday night.
I'm gonna throw a huge question mark there.
Okay.
We'll see if I agree with that comment after the show Friday.
No, the asterisk is they've got to pull off a show that lasts 2 months because there's no show in July.
Yeah.
So they've got to, of course, when you look.
No, I meant the hierarchy in-game story. I'm questioning Marcus. Hierarchy's going to have a celebration. We'll see if they actually are done with each other.
I see. Oh, well. Well, then that may heat up even more for the August show that they're setting up. Another person who is a mainstay in the Power Five, that is Matt Griffin, Action Wrestling. They've got their first cage match, June 21st, Adam Priest versus Cruel for the IWTV World title. They're still building to SCI. That's coming up in July. Matt Griffin, they're doing shows everywhere. They're having good crowds, good matches, and Action Wrestling just continues to grow. Here's somebody. His partner got hurt, and Zach Mosley has stepped up to the plate. You mentioned earlier his role at Coastal Empire and the fact since he's kind of taken over there, we have one. You and I had heard of Coastal Empire before, but now it's on a different level. He just wrestled in North Carolina this weekend. He stepped up singles, Exotic Youth, him and Pepper Bottom. Zach Mosley.
Everywhere.
He stepped up to the plate.
Yep. He's all my chips sliding in on Zach Mosley because he's showing singles, tag, not just one all promotions, getting out of the state, hands in coastal. Like I said, it's you cannot take away from what he's accomplishing right now. And
and learning the trade, learning all the different skills of wrestling.
Yep.
Because you can't wrestle forever, but you can do the other things. And then finally, in the Power Five, again, we've talked about them a lot recently. IWE, they are making moves. They're going big. They ran North Carolina. They're running the Beckplex. So they are putting their money where their mouth is, and really, they are not satisfied with Georgia. They're trying to go bigger. So they would be the only Georgia promotion in 1 year running Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. They're running all 3 states in just a couple of month period. That's a pretty big accomplishment.
And look, I pushed all my chips in on Zach Mosley. IWE's putting all their chips in because it's ambitious. We talked about it, and look, everybody's like, "Oh, I'm not." This isn't a critique at all. This is literally me saying they're pushing their chips in. They're gonna make a run, and they're gonna find out a lot about themselves for the rest of this summer/year, about where how they're gonna grow and how they're gonna move forward. But is it risky? Typically, most ambitious moves are absolutely. So, but as of right now, they're still sitting right here in the Power Five.
You have to respect the hustle of the IWE team, and it's going to be very interesting to see. Where they go. But fans, so much going on in Georgia, and the only way, again, you're going to be able to follow it all. Subscribe. You got to subscribe on YouTube. You got to hit the like. You got to hit that bell. We have content coming out all the time to keep you up to date with what's happening in Georgia wrestling and beyond. We're excited for this weekend. Again, if you're out and about and you see us at a show, we would love to talk to you. We would love to. I mean, it's just nice to know people are listening. It's nice to know people, are getting some good information. But Southern Honor 63 this Friday night, a full weekend. I'm still coming off the high of this past Saturday night and the great Turnbuckle show. Nick, any closing thoughts before we get out of here today?
Yeah, Southern Honor, you brought it up. Viral's kind of maybe, Georgia Premiere and Viral are kind of my leans at the moment. We'll see. Make sure you go check out. But, just find the ones that, go back through the show when you're listening again. Find the one that's close to you, man, and make sure you support these guys. If you love indie wrestling, man, you got to support them by buying tickets. That's the best way to support all those promotions that are near you. And hopefully we'll see you there. Come up and tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like about the shows. We're okay with that, too. Just be nice about it. Be polite about it, I guess.
Buy a ticket. Yeah, buy a ticket. Share the poster. Support the movement.
1,000%.
So, all right. Well, fans, we appreciate all your support. We appreciate you listening. And for Nick McDaniel and the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network, this is Heath Mulligan, and we'll see you at the matches.